interesting day for Man United so far. Let's get straight there because Matthijs de Ligt and Nusayr Mazraoui are at the training ground, as is Vinny O'Connor. And it seems like these two deals are getting closer, Vinny.
That's right, yeah, 2 medicals underway. We've had the usual palaver of waiting to see whether or not it's the 2 players themselves in the blacked-out windowed people carriers that have turned up here at Manchester United's training ground. They went in a good few hours ago now, and one of the people carriers subsequently came out. We're not 100% sure whether the medical is taking place on-site, because certainly United have the medical facilities, or whether part of it is taking place off-site at the moment. But both those players undergoing medicals today ahead of a move to Manchester United. We can talk about those deals as well that Manchester United have struck with Bayern Munich. For Matthijs de Ligt, it will be a deal worth up to £42.9 million. That'll be £38.6 million plus £4.3 million in add-ons. We know about his relationship, of course, with Erik ten Hag. He was his captain at Ajax. They won the Dutch League title, of course, and got to the semi-finals of the Champions League as well. He subsequently spent 2 seasons at Bayern Munich after signing from Juventus as well, playing 73 times for Munich and scoring 5 goals in that time. Has obviously lost his place in the side of late, but still only 24 years of age, so if he can recapture his best form, then obviously it's a decent deal for Manchester United. And add to that, as you mentioned, Mazraoui, another reinforcement for that back line, much needed for Manchester United given the injury problems that they've had there, of course. He's also having his medical today, as I say. Particularly important deal as well, with Wan-Bissaka seemingly moving to West Ham United now. Obviously, West Ham had a deal for Mazraoui sorted, it seemed, earlier in this summer transfer window, but turned their attention to Wan-Bissaka with that deal falling through. And now, ironically, obviously, Mazraoui's move to Manchester United seems dependent on Wan-Bissaka moving to West Ham United. At the moment, that all appears to be moving forward as well. Registration for both de Ligt and Mazraoui needs to be completed by midday on Thursday for them to be available for the season opener. As I say, we're not anticipating any problems as regards personal terms with either player, so there's every chance they could at least have some involvement in that season opener against Fulham on Friday night.
Vinny, how pleased personally will Erik ten Hag be to get these deals over the line? Obviously now he's working in a wider structure with Ineos, but in terms of de Ligt especially, he's a player that he knows really well.
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing that immediately springs to mind is it always helps a manager when you've got players in the dressing room who are loyal to you, and certainly de Ligt falls into that category, as does Mazraoui as well. But we'll start with de Ligt and just looking at what he'll bring to Manchester United. Obviously, it'll be a second centre-back signing this summer after the arrival of Len Yoro, but we know that Yoro is out for, another 3 months or so after picking up that foot injury against Arsenal. Albeit he is one for the future, but at the same time, we know the issues that United have had, particularly at centre-half. Or certainly rated him as one of the best central defenders in Europe. He said back in 2019 that he had no doubt he will soon be number 1 in that position as well. De Ligt himself was 19 at that point. I mentioned earlier that he was Ten Hag's captain as well, captain of the side that reached the Champions League semi-finals. He was 17, of course, when he was the youngest player to play in a Europa League final as well, and left Ajax still as a teenager, having played 100 times for them. That shows the experience that he's got at a relatively young age as well. I also mentioned that he's looking to recover his best levels after a dip in form during his time at Bayern Munich. Wants to obviously rediscover his best at club level, but also to get back into the international starting lineup as well. And Ten Hag was quoted as saying a couple of years that he wanted to sign him a couple of years ago. At that time, his move to Bayern was pretty much done. It seems that maybe fate has brought them back together at crucial times in both of their careers. As for Mazraoui, again, another former Ajax defender, United's need for a fullback may be highlighted in that Community Shield as well, when you had Pellistri playing as a makeshift right back during that second period. Mazraoui himself can actually play right back and left back as well. He enjoyed working with Ten Hag first time around, credits him with helping him on a tactical level and his attacking development as well. He described him as a top coach who's been very important to him as well. I think there's also a feeling that maybe Erik ten Hag is hoping Mazraoui can rekindle that relationship he had with Antony and bring the best out of Antony. They had a decent working relationship, a decent partnership down that right-hand side during their time at Ajax as well. So the reasoning, it seems, behind both deals is sound, and Erik ten Hag will just be hoping now that all bodes well for what kind of form they can show here at Manchester United when those deals are complete.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Vinny. Right, let's get straight into this then. Kevin, De Ligt, I mean, as Vinny pointed out there, he was the next big thing, wasn't he? As a young centre-back, played in the Europa League final at 17 years old, high praise. There is this perception that his career is not stagnated, but it's maybe not quite continued on that trajectory, even though he's played for some big clubs. Do you think he is a good signing for Manchester United?
Yeah, I do. I think context is really important here because you're absolutely right. As a teenager, burst onto the scene at Ajax, held that back line together at times. Ajax took a lot of risks then. Brilliant team that got to the semi-finals of the Champions League in 2019, was so close to reaching that final. Then he goes to Juventus. Juventus at that stage, starting that decline from where they were, the dominant force in Italy. There are some big beasts in that dressing room when he arrives, guys like Chiellini, guys like Bonucci. Wouldn't take too kindly to a guy coming in as the next big thing in their position. He's admitted himself, he found it really difficult to establish himself as a leader, and that's always what he wants to do. He wants to be a big voice in the dressing room. He always fronts up in interviews. He's always very candid about whether he's performed poorly or whether a team's performed poorly. So he goes to Juventus, but he did play a lot. People make out that he was on the bench a lot, but actually he did play a lot of games for Juventus. Then he goes to Bayern. It's a similar scenario in the sense that his time there coincided with their most difficult period in recent memory because they only just won the league first season and then didn't win the league last season. He had some injury problems as well that set him back a bit. But I still believe this is a guy who's just literally turned 25, lots of experience, played in a lot of big games, is working with a coach who knows him. And I think if he stays fit, has all the tools to be a leading player for United in the years to come. I think Mazraoui is a really interesting one as well because here's a guy who's versatile, can cover left back, cover right back. Thomas Tuchel played him in almost every big Champions League game last season. But the big question mark over him is injuries. He's had injuries, He's had some illness problems as well. And so he hasn't been starting as many games as you would like to see from a player of that calibre. So that's going to be a big question. The other thing, and I've always felt this about him, even when he was at Ajax, going forward, very, very good. And I think that point about Antony is a really interesting one. Defensively, can be caught out a bit, so that will need to improve as well.
James, how about these two signings? Because, you know, we're hearing Ineos, they're coming in, they've got their own ideas, we've got a new CEO, new director of football. But do these two signings show that Ten Hag still does have an influence on who comes in?
Yeah, well, Ten Hag heading into his third season now in charge at Manchester United, but his fingerprints have been all over United's transfer activity over the previous few windows. And that looks to be the same here because with Mazraoui and De Ligt on their way in, that would make it 11 players United would have signed who were either born in the Netherlands or played there. He's overseen the signings of Dutch internationals Joshua Zirkzee and Tyrell Malacia. Wout Weghorst was on loan at the club last year. Antony, Lisandro Martinez and Andre Onana all played under Ten Hag at Ajax, as did De Ligt and Mazraoui. Christian Eriksen previously played at Ajax, though never played under Ten Hag. United, they're yet to decide whether or not to bring Sofian Amrabat back to the club permanently. But he worked under Ten Hag at Utrecht, and Mason Mount was on loan at Vitesse in 2017. So despite Manchester United rebooting their sporting structure this summer, like Dan Ashworth, Christopher Vell, Omar Barada and Jason Wilcox coming in, it's clear Ten Hag still has a strong voice when it comes to recruitment, and that's surely a sign they really do see him as the long-term manager of Manchester United.
Oh, there's lots going on when we're not in vision, dare I say. Mark McAdam, Dharma Chef, join me tonight because it's really busy, actually, I have to say. Lots of things are breaking all the time. So we're going to start with some breaking news. Mark, what can you tell us?
Yeah, just as we were going on air, we got confirmation of this story. It's a story we've been talking about on Sky Sports News for the last few days, and Brentford have confirmed Fabio Carvalho is now a B. They tweeted it about 20 minutes ago with a silhouette, and it's now been confirmed. And this is the statement that's been released by the football club. It says Brentford have signed Fabio Carvalho from Liverpool on a 5-year deal with a one-year club option. The former Fulham midfielder played 21 times for the Reds and impressed for Arne Slot's side during their pre-season tour of the United States this summer. Thomas Frank has also been quoted, and he said as well, Fabio is the type of player that we don't have many of in the squad, so he will add that something extra for us. The 21-year-old has joined for a total package worth £27.5 million. We know that there was a rejected bid from Liverpool earlier on in the window from Southampton, which we understand to be worth 15, but Brentford put onto the table an offer that Liverpool quite simply couldn't refuse. I know that Arne Slot was keen on working with Fabio Carvalho, didn't want him to go. However, he understood that this was a deal the club simply couldn't turn down. He had 2 loan spells last season at RB Leipzig and in the second half of the campaign in the EFL, in the Championship with Hull, where he scored 9 goals in 20 games, made a real impact in the second tier and was viewed very much as one for the future at Liverpool. But like we say, 27.5 million as a total package was just too much for them to turn down, bearing in mind they'd picked him up from Fulham just 2 summers ago for £5 million.
Gosh, what a return.
It'll be a theme of the show. Big business being done, big profits being made by these Premier League sides as they sell some of those younger players. And like Thomas Frank says, they've got someone that could add that little bit of X factor to that Brentford side.
Do you think generally teams are being pretty savvy because of PSR rules? Do you think that's, kind of help things that in order they need to make the profit?
Well, they need to be clever. They need to be creative. There are rules in place at the moment, and you also have to remember there are some other shadow rules that are in place for this forthcoming season as well, which potentially could mean that PSR changes next summer. And therefore, clubs have to be sensible. They have to be sustainable. They can't spend beyond their means. They have to make sure they have high turnover and that everything they do fits into what the financial parameters that have been set out by the Premier League are. As we've seen, Everton, Nottingham Forest, teams are being penalised when you break the rules. And I think over the course of the last 6 months or so, that has proved to be a stark warning for a number of Premier League sides that maybe were sailing a little bit close to the wind. Suddenly they say, actually, no, we have to make sure we fall within these rules because there are real penalties here.
How Manchester United could land Matthijs de Ligt after missing out on Frenkie de Jong. Manchester United could be on the brink of doing with Matthijs de Ligt what they couldn't accomplish with Frenkie de Jong. United's newly unveiled third kit may be white, but it should probably be orange, as yet another transfer window sees the club heavily focused on Dutch talent. Despite his denials, Erik ten Hag seems intent on bringing a bit of the Netherlands to Old Trafford. Ten Hag reportedly eyed de Ligt during his first summer in charge at United, as the Dutch centre-back checks all the boxes, Dutch-born, Ajax-trained, and a former player under Ten Hag. Alongside Noussair Mazraoui, another Dutch-born player, de Ligt could solidify United's Dutch influence. Bayern Munich's board member, Uli Hoeneß, highlighted de Ligt's nationality, perhaps in jest, as United under Ten Hag edges closer to a Dutch takeover. With de Ligt and Mazraoui potentially in the fold, Ten Hag could field a lineup featuring several players with Ajax ties: Onana, Mazraoui, de Ligt, Martinez, Malaysia, Amrabat, Mount, Eriksson, Antony, Xerxes, and Weghorst. This lineup could even slip into a 4-3-3 Ajax formation. Even Johnny Evans has some Ajax experience, having played in the Amsterdam tournament as a teenager. With a new co-chairman, CEO, technical director, and sporting director in place, United's transfer strategy is more Holland-centric than ever. While some signings, like Lenny Yoro, seem influenced by Ineos and are club-focused rather than manager-driven, de Ligt and Mazraoui appear to be players Ten Hag wants for his system. This season was always going to be a fascinating one for United, made even more intriguing by their transfer moves. Despite a lackluster season review and a drawn-out 17-day evaluation, United decided to keep faith in Ten Hag, opting to extend his contract by a year rather than making any drastic changes. The support for Ten Hag in the transfer market suggests significant trust in his vision. However, his track record is mixed. While Lisandro Martinez has been a standout success, his 2 seasons at United have been marred by 4 significant injury layoffs. Sofian Amrabat remains officially listed as a Fiorentina player, even as United looks to turn his loan into a permanent deal. The delay hardly inspires confidence as the transfer window nears its close. Earlier this month, Ten Hag defended Wout Weghorst, a player who managed just 2 goals in 31 appearances, calling him a success. Meanwhile, Tyrell Malaysia is out until October, and Rasmus Højlund, Amrabat's teammate at SEG International, must aim for a 20-goal season, especially with United potentially dropping to the Europa League. Hopes are still high for Mason Mount, a former Vitesse Arnhem loanee, despite his underwhelming return against Manchester City. Andre Onana, who should be more reliable in his second season, has shown promising signs during pre-season and in the Community Shield. In Saturday's match at Wembley, all 11 players were involved in a 16-pass sequence that led to a chance for Marcus Rashford, highlighting United's potential under Ten Hag's guidance. "Be prepared," Onana said during a session at UCLA, promising to take more risks this season. De Ligt, a former teammate from that captivating Ajax squad that came within seconds of the Champions League final, could be the familiar shield Onana needs. Had Ten Hag gotten his way in 2022, he would have reunited the blonde duo at Old Trafford. With Donny van de Beek already at the club, United had agreed on a fee with Barcelona for Frenkie de Jong. Van de Beek's failure at United didn't deter Ten Hag. With De Ligt and Mazraoui, 6 of Ten Hag's signings would be former Ajax players. De Ligt's recent form is a concern, given his mixed performances over the past 5 years. He was sent off during the Netherlands Euro 2020 exit against the Czech Republic, barely featured in the 2022 World Cup, and hasn't made much of an impact ahead of Euro 2024. Juventus won a title during De Ligt's 3 years in Turin, but he started just 23 of Bayern's 49 games last season. Had United replaced Ten Hag with former Bayern manager Thomas Tuchel, De Ligt wouldn't likely be heading to Carrington. Ten Hag famously declared that United would never play in Ajax's style last October. Yet the passing exchanges that created chances for Rashford and Ahmad against City suggest otherwise. Casemiro was crucial in these moves, pushing forward to support attacks and linking up with the aforementioned forwards. During Ten Hag's post-match press conference, a journalist wryly suggested that Casemiro thrived in a new system. Ten Hag corrected him, stating, "I don't think it's about the system." Transitioning from De Jong to Casemiro 2 years ago was not a like-for-like change, and it was former director of football John Murtough who did the heavy lifting in the £70 million Casemiro deal. The Brazilian displayed his penetrating passing range in that influential first season and now seems more of an attacking midfielder than a defensive one. Perhaps this is Ten Hag's master plan. In the absence of a new midfielder, he might be willing to forego defensive organization for attacking prowess. It's a tall order for De Ligt, who struggled in Serie A and the Bundesliga, to find success in the Premier League, but he's a ball-playing centre-back familiar with Ten Hag's demands, much like Martinez. If the future is bright, it's thanks to the Orange.